Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the European Commission's webinar on introducing numeracy in ECEC with STEAM, songs, and storytelling. My name is Kira, and I will be your host today. This webinar is organized by the European School Education Platform, which we invite you to take a look at your earliest convenience. My colleague Alessia will post all the necessary links in the chat for you, and we are very happy that you are joining us for today's webinar. Without further ado, let me just introduce today's speaker. Paula Walsh is an experienced lecturer, researcher, and published author in the field of early childhood education. She's currently lecturing at the Southeast Technological University in Carlow, Ireland, while also completing her PhD research on STEAM in early childhood education at Dunkeld Institute of Technology. Paula has recently published 2 books on ECEC practice, Full Steam Ahead and Sjalta in Practice. Both books are available on her website. Paula, without further ado, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Kira, and welcome everybody. I'm just going to share my screen there and my slides with you all. So I'll just give it 1 second to come up. So you should be able to see them now. Is that okay, Cara? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you for joining us, everybody, and I'm delighted to be here today. And I'd just like to say thank you to the European SchoolNet for asking me on to give this webinar for you. And what we're going to talk about, or what I'm going to talk about today, is STEAM and laying foundations for numeracy skills in early childhood education through STEAM and songs, storytelling, rhymes, and so forth. So first of all, though, I just want to give you a little bit of information just about who I am. So, as Kira said, I'm an assistant lecturer in early childhood education at the Southeast Technological University in Carlow in Ireland. And I'm in the final sort of year of my PhD, and I'm researching STEAM in early childhood education. And I'm also a former early childhood educator and manager of an outdoor early childhood setting here in Ireland. So as Kira mentioned, I have just last year, I published a book, Full Steam Ahead, so focusing on science, technology, engineering, the arts and maths as a tool and for educators, with lots of different ideas and activities for bringing STEAM into your early childhood education practice. If you are interested in that, you can find it online. Okay, so what is STEAM? Just to start off with the very basics, just for a minute. So for those of you who STEAM may be something completely new. So STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, the arts and maths. You may have heard of STEM. STEM as a term in terms of an educational approach has been around for a good few decades now. And STEAM really is the same thing, but with the arts sort of incorporated in it. And we know how important the arts and creativity are to children's early childhood education. So, that's why we're focusing on STEAM today. So maybe if you would like to put into the chat there, just as we're getting started, just in terms of STEAM, do you already plan STEAM activities in your early childhood education practice? Maybe you already use STEAM activities to promote early numeracy development, whether that's through songs and stories or in other ways. So you might share some of the strategies you already engage and things you already do, or things you find useful in the chat as nearly like a community of practice to share with others. So you're welcome and to share those ideas in the chat there as we go along. So thinking about why STEAM is important for children in early childhood education, why do we need to be thinking about STEAM with children 0 to 6? Well, in terms of children of that age group, their lives in early childhood, they're born into the 21st century, they're 21st century citizens, 21st century culture, which we know has changed a lot, and there's a lot of development around STEAM, around technology, in terms of culture and the way the world works. When we think about children's connections with others and how they interact with each other, how they interact with us, how they interact with the world around them, how we all interact with each other and the world around us has completely changed. I mean, just take how I'm engaging with you today over the World Wide Web, using a lot of technology, a lot of engineering has gone into, the computers that we use and the systems that we use to communicate with each other. So, the way we interact in that way has very much changed, but not even just in terms of technology. If you even walk into a public bathroom, for example, and you open the door, initially it might be completely dark, but we know because of the world that we live in now that once we step foot inside the room, a sensor will pick up that we are there and a light will come on. So, those simple ways that we engage with the everyday environment, that's the world that children are exposed to. It's not new for them, whereas it would have been new for us. The world is different than how, when we grew up. But for them, this is standard. This is the world that they live in. In terms of how children learn and develop, STEAM is more prevalent in educational policy and practice. Probably, I would imagine, in most countries. I know in Ireland, where I am, there's STEM and STEAM educational policies in the Department of Education, and a lot more focus is being put across the educational system from early childhood right through to third level university education on STEAM and STEM. And also in terms of the skills and the dispositions that STEAM activities support children to develop, things that are really important to them both now and also will be important in the future. Things like being problem solvers or critical thinkers, being innovative, being able to collaborate with other people, and also supporting their digital literacy. So STEAM activities are very important for all of those reasons. Just recently published in 2025 by the EU Commission was the Action Plan on Basic Skills. And this sort of highlights as well a rationale and why thinking about STEAM is important. So what it tells us is that mathematical skills are essential for everyday life in our technology-rich world, and they are the basis of logical and abstract thinking. And that advancements in technology, educational research and societal needs have led to more emphasis on learner problem-solving abilities and critical thinking skills, encouraging them to understand and apply maths concepts rather than just memorizing formulas. So it's that practical way of, how do maths impact us? How does early numeracy impact children in the real world? And why do they need those skills to sort of navigate the world that they're in? Also, in terms of the EU Commission's Union on Skills, it says that building skills for life, including media, digital literacy, critical thinking, or basic cybersecurity, is vital for Europe's overall preparedness. So when we're thinking about skills and basic skills, STEM is included in those, and it's acknowledged, as well across these policy documents from the EU Commission, and being of great importance, both now and into the future. So there's a big rationale there for why we need to be thinking about STEAM right from early childhood education. And STEAM is present, before we get into the stories, it's present in the world around us. So if we think about a digital clock in our house, it's representing numbers and the concept of time in the 12-hour format and the 24-hour format. A lot of households where children live will have a smart speaker or an Alexa, and they might listen to music. So that's a technology in itself, the piece of equipment. And also in music, there's maths in terms of rhythm and beat. If we think about, fridges or appliances like a fridge or a freezer, there's maths involved in that in terms of temperature, in terms of freezing, thawing, and the various states of water, and also in terms of paying for things and contactless money, contactless payments. We're moving swiftly towards being a cashless society in a lot of countries. So, there's a lot of maths as well involved in understanding money and numbers and the amount of things. So STEAM activities, are really important because of all these reasons, STEAM being all around us. And thinking about the numeracy component of STEAM, if we think about some activities or things that children engage with or play activities in early childhood education. So some common things that we might, activities we might facilitate for children or materials we might have. So if you're thinking about a child building a tower from blocks, there's height, there's amount, they're very basic math skills. Cars and ramps, if children are, playing with a car and pushing it down a ramp, they're observing speed, trajectory, and distance. So they're numeracy skills. So it's more than just the counting and the numbers that we're thinking about. And then if we say are baking with children, then there's concepts of temperature, measuring the volume of liquids and so forth. So in all of those activities, even though we mightn't think about them as being maths activities, there's opportunities for supporting and facilitating children to develop early numeracy skills. But today we're going to focus mainly on STEAM and numeracy in songs and stories and nursery rhymes. And we often sing songs and read stories to children, right from birth. It's one of the earliest ways that we can interact with and play with children right from birth. But how often do we think about how they support early numeracy and maths? So if we think of stories and we're thinking about supporting early numeracy, of course, there's some obvious, ones that we might think of, the ones that maybe have numbers in their title. So Goldilocks and the Three Bears, for example. So there are some obvious ones which we can think of which promote numeracy. And just, if you would like to put in the chat there, if you can think of any more, I'm going to discuss another few in a minute, but there could be ones that maybe you have heard of or you use that other people mightn't have encountered, that are not the standard ones. And, so share with each other in the chat, and it'll be like, sharing our knowledge with our peers. So that would be lovely if you could do that. So what I'm going to look at today are some of the obvious ones. Exactly, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Thank you, Iona. But we have the Three Billy Goats Gruff, the Three Little Pigs, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. The three is obviously a big number, a popular number with those traditional stories. With the Little Red Hen, the Very Hungry Caterpillar, and Jack and the Beanstalk. So you'll see the first three stories, obviously we know there's numeracy involved there. There's a number in the title. But the other three, it have early numeracy and involved in them too, and we're going to have a look at that as we go through the slides. So it may not necessarily be obvious from the cover of a book that it supports early numeracy, but I think what's important is that when we're reading the book, it's looking beyond just looking for the numbers and what other kinds of language, what other kinds of concepts, what other vocabulary does the book use in the telling of the story that supports early numeracy. So if we think about Goldilocks and the Three Bears, well, yes, there's counting to three. And then we have the element of size. So the bed was too big, it was too small, or it was just right, for example. Or the temperature of the porridge, it was too hot, it was too cold, or it was just right. So there's numeracy concepts there in beyond just the number of the three, the too big, the too small, the too hot, the too cold. They insinuate there's an element of numeracy there, something that can be gauged, counted, estimated, that kind of thing. So the kind of activity idea then, if we were thinking about extending this story with children in early childhood education into an activity, what could we do? Well, first of all, we could very simply make porridge, whether that's using warm milk or cold water even, it's still, the mixing, the amounts of, how many teaspoons of porridge to teaspoons of water or scoops. I know when I get my porridge in, it has a scoop in it, and it's like 2 scoops of or 1 scoop of porridge and 2 scoops of water. So that's counting, that's numeracy there. So we can make porridge. We can, put out the materials for children. We can make porridge and we can make it properly for them to eat in terms of warm porridge. And then we're thinking about the temperature. So we're comparing the cold and the warm. We could use milk of various temperatures, but obviously not too hot. But we could make, 3 different temperatures of bowls of porridge and use a digital thermometer. So you're bringing in a digital technology in terms of the steam there to test the temperature of each of the bowls of porridge and see, they can observe the numbers coming up on the digital screen, and the concept of which one is hotter, which one is colder, which one is the middle one, the medium temperature. All of these are early numeracy concepts. And there doesn't have to be a huge temperature difference between them. We don't want to have anything that's too hot, but even for them to observe, and just enough that they can sense, if they taste it, the difference in temperature, and they can see that represented on the digital thermometer. Then moving on to the 3 billy goats gruff. This was one of my childhood favourites. And the 3 billy goats gruff want to walk over the bridge to get to the green grass on the other side, to eat it. But there's a troll hiding under the bridge who's trying to stop them from going over his bridge. So in terms of, obviously, there's 3 billy goats gruff, and they're of different sizes. There's a big one, and there's a small one, and there's a medium one, just like some of the 3 bears concepts. And they have to walk across the bridge. So in terms of going across something, that's, moving across a distance. So that's an early numeracy skill, understanding that across means moving from one place into another place. So that involves movement. It involves a certain amount of distance. And over and under, their concepts, early numeracy concepts. So, the goats go over the bridge, the troll lives under the bridge. So children then in other play, we can support them. Can you put, the cow on top of the barn? Can you put the cow under the barn? Can you put the cow beside the barn? So we can bring that learning that they get from the story into other activities. So an activity then idea that we could use, and I've used this one in-person workshops myself with educators, is you could set up a nice activity with some, small world play goats, and challenge the children with Duplo blocks to build a bridge that spans over, say, I often use a piece of foil, foil that you would wrap, tin foil we call it, that you would wrap food in, silver foil, and I'd make like a flat bendy river, and then challenge, can you build a bridge to span across the river? So how high does the bridge need to be? How wide does it need to be? And then the goats have to go up onto the bridge and over the bridge, or there's the river is going under the bridge. So there's maths concepts there. So things like height, amount, how many blocks do you need? How many blocks high do you need to build a bridge, for example, and the distance and the length. And you could also then bring that into the outdoors and use stones or planks of wood or some of those nice outdoor bricks, not real bricks, but they're like the light ones that children use to build in early childhood settings, and they can build one and then they can actually walk across it. And when I used to work in an early childhood setting, it was mostly an outdoor setting. So we used to have the children outdoors all the time, and they used to love when it rained. And thankfully, I'm in Ireland, so you may know it rains a lot here. So thankfully, they enjoyed playing in the puddles. And it would be, sometimes we would have like some tires out in the outdoors and planks of wood. And the children would love to place the tires on their side and put a plank of wood across the puddle, and they would go across the bridge. So, that's an activity that could stem out of this story. Then moving on then to the three little pigs. So, again, there's three little pigs, there's three houses. They're using various materials to build the houses. And then the wolf is trying to blow the house down. So in terms of maths and numeracy concepts here, we have the strength of the building materials. We have, the quantity and the amount of the building materials, that are needed to build a house. How many, does he need a few bricks? Does he need a lot of bricks? Does he need a large pile of hay? Those kind of things. And then the strength in terms of the strength of the wind or the breath that the wolf blows to try and blow down the house. So that's bringing in strength and force. So an activity idea that you could bring into, or that you could bring about as a result of that story would be, for example, using lollipop sticks and marshmallows, or even little balls of Play-Doh that they could roll themselves to build a house, a 3D house for the pigs. So the children can sometimes, in workshops, I use the lollipop sticks and marshmallows, but then sometimes educators say to me, but the children will eat all the marshmallows. So I decided that maybe Play-Doh might be better with the children. And actually there's more benefits to that, because they have to bring in more numeracy skills, because they have to estimate how much Play-Doh do they need to pinch off the Play-Doh to make their connector to stick the sticks into. So they have to estimate that, and then they have to roll it up into a sphere, which is another 3D sort of geometric shape. And then they make a 3D structure. Again, this is numeracy and mathematics out of the Play-Doh or the marshmallows and the sticks for the pigs. And depending, then you could have pigs that are like little plastic ones. You could have a bigger pig that's, a bigger teddy bear or whatever, and then they can make structures of different sizes. So they're starting off with small 3D structures and learning how to get them to balance and to stand up. And then they are scaling that up to be able to create a bigger scale model, which is, again, more maths concepts and early numeracy concepts. And then when they have it built, the fun begins in testing it out. So they can try to blow the house down. They can test out different ways of creating that force of air, whether it's blowing, making the force, making the wind themselves with their mouths by blowing, whether it's getting a little handheld battery operated fan like you might have when you go on vacation and it's very warm and you blow those little fans you hold to blow the wind at your face. Or you could get a hairdryer, and that's bringing in technology as well with the fans and the hairdryers to try and test different forces of wind to blow down the house. And then you can extend that even more and bring it in the outdoors to build a den that we can fit inside ourselves, so with maybe different chairs and blankets, and that can be another extension of that activity for either the outdoors or maybe for the slightly older children. So that would be another good extension of that activity. So can we build it strong enough? Can we build it big enough to fit 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever people inside? So lots of early numeracy concepts there. So now we're moving into those stories that are not necessarily obviously mathematics or numeracy based from the cover of the book. So we have the story of the Little Red Hen, which is another traditional story. And there's a lot of counting and measuring involved in this, because the Little Red Hen is she's sowing the corn, and the corn is growing, and she's asking her friends to help her to harvest it, and they don't want to. And then she uses it to make bread. So in terms of the sequential steps of a recipe, for example, to make bread, but also even in the repetition of the phraseology and the phrases in the story, not I, she keeps saying, or her friends keep saying to her, not I, not I. So that repetition to reinforce something. or predicting outcomes. So because there's a repetition in the book of what each of the friends says, they all start with not I, the children can predict and anticipate what comes next. So those prediction skills are important later in, more complex maths and calculations in later life. So an activity idea that we could bring based on this story would be making story cards or story stones based on the sequence of the story and ordering them or sorting them in the right sequence to tell the story. Making simple bread with the children, and maybe using a visual recipe card that you might have, a very simple bread recipe with a certain amount of cups of flour, a cup of water, and whatever else, a teaspoon of whatever baking powder that they need, having like a picture of the cups and a picture of the flour and a picture of the tablespoon and a picture of the baking powder. And, they can follow that recipe. And, if it's too sticky, trying to problem solve and think about what did we add not enough of, or did we add too much of something? And again, they are numeracy concepts. And then using the oven to cook the bread. How long do we need to cook it for? Another numeracy concept. What temperature? Another numeracy concept. Do we need to have the oven preheated to? What happens if we use the wrong temperature? So asking those then open-ended questions that supporting children to predict what might happen if. Will the bread rise? So again, that rising is also, it's growing in size, so more numeracy concepts there. Then we have another favourite of mine, Jack and the Beanstalk. Again, not an obviously numerical or mathematical sort of title, but if we think back, I'm not sure if you know this story, but Jack lives with his mother and they're very poor, and she sends him to market with their cow. They only have one cow, it's their last cow. Already there's numeracy coming in there, and he's to sell the cow to get money to buy food, but he meets someone along the way, a mysterious man along the way, who offers him, I think it's 3 magic beans. So again, there's numeracy there for his cow. And Jack says okay, and his mother is not very happy because all he comes back with are 3 little beans, and she throws them out the window. And overnight this beanstalk grows. So he gets 3 magic beans. The beanstalk then grows overnight, and it's huge, and it grows right up to the sky, right up through the clouds. So there's more numeracy there in terms of, understanding the whole height and scale of it. And then when he climbs up the beanstalk, he goes into a magical land, and there's a giant there. So again, size. And over the course of a period of time, he goes up and down the beanstalk numerous times for various tasks. So again, the up and the down. So an activity idea that you could bring into your early childhood setting as a result of that story might be to build a beanstalk from blocks. Maybe the children decide it's going to be all green blocks. So that's categorizing and sorting different colors, and recognizing the characteristics of colors, building the blocks. Can you build a block beanstalk that is bigger than you? Children love to measure themselves and know how high and how tall, how big they're getting. So can you build one that's bigger than you? Thinking about how high do you think it will need to be? They're estimating how tall, measuring it on the wall. How tall do you think it needs to be? You could put a little mark on the wall or a sticker on the wall, and then they can build as high as them, and then they can compare. All very much early numeracy. You could have a longer term learning experience by planting beans. The French beans, they're very easy to grow, and you could plant them in a pot, and you need to put in some support sticks, and the beans will grow up and around the stick. So the children could observe that over the course of the term in preschool. And it could be like a project-based, activity coming out of this story. So they could be observing them, watching them grow. How long does it take for the first little sprout to appear? And it's so tiny, it's small. How big is it grown to grow? And observing every day, there's another leaf. How many leaves are there on it today? They can bring out a ruler, they can measure how tall it is, and they can count the leaves. Watering the plant and with a quantity of water. How much water do we need? Not too much, not too little. And then counting the beans that grow as they harvest them, and then they can bring them home and eat them. So another wonderful idea. And you could do that indoors or outdoors. I think beans will grow in a nice sunny spot indoors in a pot as well. So thinking about the younger children as well. Sorry, I just need to take a sip of water. If we think about the younger children, sort of the under 3s and under 2s, so a very popular book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle, and I'm sure you're all familiar with, or you've at least seen this book. And again, it's not necessarily obvious from the title that there's a lot of numbers or a lot of numeracy concepts in there, but there are the size of things, counting the amount, 1 apple, 2 pears, 3 blueberries, 4 strawberries, you can see on the cover there. I think it's like a very big piece of cake, things like that. So there's size, there's counting, there's measurement, there's the amount of things, the length of things, sorting and comparing. You can sort and compare the different items that he's eating, based on, categorizing them based on the type of fruit they are. Are they a fruit? Are they a vegetable? Categorizing them based on color or other characteristics, which also supports the development of early numeracy, categorizing things and recognizing similar characteristics within things. So an activity idea might be sorting fruits and vegetables by size, shape, or color. So if you think like a very, very easy activity would be like taking a muffin tray. We all probably have a muffin tray at home with like maybe space for 12 muffins, if you're baking muffins. And you could have various fruits like blueberries, strawberries, green grapes or red grapes or little tomatoes, and the children could sort them based on color into the different sections of the muffin tray. Or then we could ask them to sort them based on size. So all of a sudden they have to mix in the different fruits and vegetables, but they're associating them by size. So they're categorizing them based on a different characteristic. So a lot of size, counting, measurement, amount, length, sorting, and comparing there. So chopping and cutting fruit and vegetables. There's a lot of learning to be got for children from preparing food, cutting up their own fruits and vegetables. Then maybe we use them to make a soup, or maybe they just eat them as part of their snack. But cutting them into slices, into chunks, estimating how the force needed to cut them, or the size, or how many portions can you cut it into half? Can you cut it into quarters, and so forth? And maybe using a ruler to measure and compare. Or we could go outdoors with a magnifying glass and hunt for bugs, explore the patterns on the bugs and how the magnifying glass makes those patterns bigger. So they could look for caterpillars, and they might find caterpillars, and they can observe the characteristics of them. And they might find a butterfly, and observing the symmetry on its wings and the pattern on its wings. So that's all more early numeracy concepts there. And then thinking about the babies, I hope you're probably familiar with these if you can see them okay, that range of books, that's not my puppy, or that's not my cat, or that's not my monster, those books. And they are really good for supporting early numeracy in babies and toddlers, because it's the characteristics and the attributes of things, which is also part of early numeracy, that they are learning about. So they learn about it in a sensory way, because the books, you touch them. So for example, in the That's Not My Puppy book, there might be a puppy, whose its coat is too rough, or its nose is too shiny, so it's learning about the different characteristics and attributes, which is important for classification, for sorting, in terms of early numeracy skills. So characterizing, recognizing attributes that are similar and different, sorting and assigning, recognizing commonalities, as I said, and differences, and regularities and irregularities. So all part of early numeracy skills. So they're wonderful ranges of books for the babies and young children. So that was the story. So now moving on to sort of the songs and the nursery rhymes. So again, there's like some obvious songs and nursery rhymes which promote early numeracy. So maybe, here there's the 5 green and speckled frogs sat on a speckled log. I'm sure you know that one. But if, there might be some other ones that you could share and put into the chat for others as well. But some other famous sort of popular examples might be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, once I caught a fish alive. And you can even see in the way that what supports learning the 1 to 5 numbers, and it's even the rhythm of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that rhythm dun, 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 reinforces and helps the recall of the numbers. It's the same if you think about learning the alphabet. And when we sing the alphabet song, learning the song helps us to recall that the letters and supports early literacy. And this does the same for early numeracy. Incy Wincy Spider climbed up the water spout, down came the rain and washed him out. So again, moving him somewhere else. So that's numeracy concepts there. 10 green bottles sitting on the wall, with 1 green bottle should accidentally fall. There are 9 green bottles. So we have a concept of more or less and subtraction coming into play there. 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed. 1 fell off and bumped his head. So again, the subtraction there in terms of starting with 5 and every time the Anska marching 1 by 1 exactly, Rebecca. Yeah, thank you. So there's lots of concepts. So it's more than just the numbers. It's the concepts. 10 the bed and the little one said roll over, the same thing. 1, 2 buckle my shoe. 3, 4 knock at the door. So the rhyming of that, the rhythm and the rhyming, the emphasis on the different words helps with the recall of the numbers, helps with learning to count. And then this little piggy went to the market. I'm sure we've all played that with little ones on their toes. This little piggy went to the market and you're wiggling the toe. This little piggy stayed at home. This little piggy had roast beef and this little piggy had none. And this little piggy went wee, 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 wee all the way home and you might tickle their leg. So that's a lovely one with babies because the sensory touch and the sensory play of wiggling their toe as we're this little piggy and this little piggy and it's sort of reinforcing the concept of there being different piggies, which was so a different number of them, and it's reinforcing that through sort of sensory proprioception by wiggling their toes. So they all promote concepts such as adding, subtracting, more, less, sequencing, things like that. And then the actions, as I said, or the rhythm or the rhyme reinforces the numeracy concepts that the children are learning about. So another one that we're probably all familiar with, the wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, giving the motion, the distance, all day long, all and long, and given the concept of the day being of a certain length of time. Repetition in the song again to reinforce it all. And then you could like for example, the repetition round and round, round and round, or the horn on the bus goes beep, 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 and they're doing the activity. So all of that is reinforcing the numeracy. And then to bring that into the environment, you could build a bus like with, cushions on the ground, or even with block play or junk art play, thinking about the shape of the bus, the size of the bus, the number of different components. Well, it needs a steering wheel and it needs 4 wheels and it needs, how many of us are there? So how many seats does it need? How many doors does it have? What distance will it travel? Where will it go to? Will it go very, very far away? Where is very, very far away in the children's mind? That could be to across the road to the shop, or do they understand the concept of very, very far away being, the the other side of their town, the other side of their country, the other side of the world. So it's understanding and supporting that abstract thinking that they're still developing in early childhood. Counting the passengers, as I said, thinking about the length of a journey, and then we can really support children no matter what activity we're doing. And I'm sure you probably do this a lot in your practice already, in terms of asking them open-ended questions. So how many seats are on the bus? How far to the bus stop? How much is that should be bus ticket, not bus ticket. That's a spelling mistake there. How much is the bus ticket? So thinking about numeracy concepts there. So just generally thinking about music and movement, as I mentioned, with the wheels on the bus, the rhythm and the beats in the music, counting fast, slow, that the rhythm and the repetition, that all reinforces our understanding of numeracy concepts. Recognizing patterns in the music, all songs tend to have a chorus, and that pattern, that repetition helps us to remember. If you have a song that you like, that you'll always sort of remember. If you're in the car and you're listening to the radio and a song comes on and you're sort of thinking to the verse, then the chorus comes on and suddenly you know all the words and you're singing at the top of your voice, because that repetition throughout the song, the rhyming, it helps us to remember it, and we remember the pattern of the song. Even dancing and movement, so children are learning about distance, the length of my arm, can I reach you? Learning about spatial awareness and their body in the space, where does their body end and something else begins? Or if they're dancing around and not concentrating, do they bump off somebody, or do they bump into the wall maybe? And thinking about, moving things, put your hands up, put your hands down, put your arm in, put your arm out, touch your toes, all those different things we can do in when we're dancing and in different songs. And we can also bring that then into more sort of creative arts activities. So for music and movement, you could make with children, with recycled or junk art materials, you could make shakers or drums or wind chimes. You can see there's a wind chime made with old CDs, or you could use old cutlery or old pieces of wood or anything that when it, or some pieces of ribbon with some bells attached, anything that will make noise. And then we can put it outside, and when the wind moves it, it will make a noise. So that movement by the force of the wind, in the music, or in the sound that the wind chime makes. So just to start to wrap up then, when we're thinking about promoting early numeracy, the key point, I suppose, is remembering it's not all about the numbers and the counting. So the focus being on the song or the story, or, being present in the title. The number doesn't always have to be there. So look out for those numeracy concepts, those early maths pre-numeracy concepts, which we can support using words and languages in all stories and songs. So some simple examples there: more or less, or big or small. So, even in the picture, it doesn't have to be in the words. With the example there of the two dogs, one is very big, one is very small. One has long legs, one has short legs. One has a pattern and symmetry, one doesn't. So there's lots of visual numeracy opportunities there. So other things to think of beyond the numbers and the numeracy in that way, in terms of promoting early numeracy, different concepts. I've mentioned some of them: under, height, weight, distance, speed, longer, shorter. So recognizing, are these words or are other words that mean these things? So in terms of distance, like how far away, is how far away did Jack and the Beanstalk, how far away did he live from the market or something, so that insinuates distance. It implies distance. So it's implying a maths concept. Speed, longer, shorter, over, in, on, things being the same or different, fast, slow, something being close or far, full or empty, around, the shape of something, the 3D shapes, a triangle or a pyramid or a circle or a sphere. That's all into geometry. Pattern, repetition in the actual words themselves, and other concepts about things like about. You know, we oh, like if you're saying that it was about to start, so the webinar is about to start, gives the concept. That doesn't mean that it's an hour away. That probably means something in terms of the time being a short amount of time. So it supports an early numeracy concept, or almost, or nearly, or never, or sometimes. All those things are early numeracy. So we can just to remember to be observant and to look out for it in the text, but also in the visuals, how we can bring more focus and support those development of numeracy skills in the stories and the songs and the nursery rhymes that we are telling to children or singing with children. So if you're interested in learning more generally about STEAM in early childhood education, as I mentioned at the start, that's my book there, Full Steam Ahead. And it is available online from barupress.ie or on Amazon, or there's a QR code there. But I'd really love if you followed me on Instagram. I try to share some different insights and some different, ideas around STEAM and early childhood. So I would really love if you give me a follow there on Instagram. It's Paula Walsh 77. Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, or my email is also there if anybody wants to contact me. So that's it from me. And I'd just like to say thank you for listening. And I'm not sure if there's any questions that went in the chat there, Kira.
Yes, actually. We had one question from someone who said they are an author of a children's nonfiction and fiction books based on STEAM. Do you feel there are any areas of STEAM that are not well enough represented in books for teacher and parents of early learners and primary school children?
Good question. And yes, I suppose one thing that springs to mind immediately, and it's something that that I've addressed in my book as well, is around technology. Because technology and can instill a little bit of fear around bringing it into the early childhood education classroom, because obviously there's loads of concerns around screen time, too much screen time, and that kind of thing. So what I try to promote is thinking about technology in the absolute broadest sense of the word, and understanding that technology does not have to mean digital screens and devices. So bringing technology into your early years setting doesn't have to mean bringing in iPads or having young children on screens while they're at preschool or kindergarten. So thinking earlier on when we were talking about the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and I was talking about maybe making the porridge, and I suggested you could use a digital thermometer to test the different temperatures of the porridge. Well, that's a digital technology. But so is the spoon that we use to mix the porridge, because a technology is really only a tool. The word technology existed before the internet and before, iPads and smartphones. So we need to remember that anything that's an innovation, that's inventive, that's a tool, like a pen, like, a whisk, like, what did I mention earlier? Oh, a big spoon. They are also technologies. So don't let that fear around screen time be a barrier to bringing technology into the early childhood setting, because it can be a completely unplugged technology, just like I mentioned there, or it can be a digital technology with no screen time concerns, like a digital weighing scales or a digital thermometer or a speaker that we listen to music. Or we could also go on to the realm of technology with screens. But even still, it doesn't have to be a device, it could be something else that has a little screen on it, like the digital thermometer, I suppose, has a little screen. So, it's just not letting that fear factor around technology would be something that I think there's not enough information on, and I've tried to highlight that a lot in my book. I don't talk about bringing screen-based devices as technology into the early childhood setting at all. I give lots of other ideas for digital technologies with screens, but which are not iPads, or with them, as I said, the digital with no screens or the completely unplugged. So even, for example, you could have an old kind of projector that projects light onto the wall, and then you have different resources that the children can put on the projector that projects light onto the wall. That's a digital technology with no screen, or even a flashlight or a torch. So just thinking outside the box and not let ourselves be restricted by a definition of technology as just screens and devices.
Lovely. Thank you. Very good advice. And one last question. How early do you think we could integrate predictions into ECEC? Could you give an example?
Predictions. Well, I think that from birth, if you're playing peekaboo with a baby that's only a couple of months old, there's prediction involved in that, and anticipation and, of what's going to happen. They're thinking about, are you coming back or not? Because as we know, if we are hiding our face behind our hands for a small baby, as far as they're concerned, they're not sure where we are, so, or if they're hiding, or we would often, playing on a mat with a young baby, and you might have a few different items, and then you cover them with a cloth and you take one away, and then so they don't know what's going to be there, what's going to be missing. So I think that it's all age appropriate, isn't it? So yeah, I think predicting can happen right from birth. If we're singing a song, for example, with a baby, and it's all about that familiarization, so they start to know and become familiar with the rhythm, with the tune, with maybe the facial expressions or the actions that we make, and so they are then able to develop those prediction skills of what they can expect to come next in the song or in the story.
Wonderful. Thank you. I think that was very useful. And thank you very much, Paula, in general, for this inspiring presentation and for sharing your knowledge with us. I am 100% sure that all of the participants have learned a lot, and we have received a lot of positive comments in the chat. Yes, so before we officially close this session, just a bit of practical information. The evaluation form has been shared by my colleague in the chat. Please save this link and fill it out after the webinar. Another thing, certificates are not issued for this webinar, and you can find the presentation alongside with the recording on the ECEC page in the beginning of next week. The second one is about our upcoming professional development offer. We have some courses and webinars upcoming, so please visit the course catalog on the European School Education platform to not miss any exciting opportunities. And lastly, we also wanted to make you aware of the eTwinning groups. eTwinning feature groups are a virtual space for eTwinners to share resources, project ideas, celebrate achievements, and build meaningful connections with other eTwinners. So take a look at all of the feature groups or join the Mathematics and STEAM group to keep this conversation going. Thank you all for joining us today, and many thanks, Paula. In the eTwinning webinars, we have a little custom to leave the floor to our speaker to give a final word, suggestion, or wrap up to share with our participants.
Yeah, thanks, Kira. And, I suppose I'd just like to say thank you all for, for being here and for listening. I hope you got something really useful in terms of bringing early numeracy skills into your early childhood practice through STEAM, and with a particular focus on songs and stories and rhymes. And just to, I suppose, reiterate again, to think beyond the numbers. It's about, looking in the story, in the words and vocabulary, and in the images for different ways that we can bring early numeracy concepts in there. As I said, I would love if you followed me on Instagram or reach out to me. And my Instagram is paulawalsh77. And I hope to see you all again soon. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. And thank you to all of you. I wish you a wonderful evening. And we hope to see you all in April for our webinar on promoting a lifelong love of reading and writing in your students. Have a lovely evening and goodbye.